So what are the consequences of your family saying no to doing an intervention, or the consequences of putting off the intervention? As long as I've been doing this, I have heard over and over and over again, we're in a holding pattern. We're taking baby steps. We're taking it day by day. And when you tell us those things, we know your loved one isn't. Your loved one is still ripping through their life and yours like a tornado. And the biggest reason families make excuses, above all the other videos and the content that's on our excuses of why families don't do an intervention article, is because they're avoiding the confrontation, they're fearful of the outcome, and they're afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. You know, it goes back to, what if my loved one says no? That is by far and wide the biggest fear in the questions family ask. But the real fear is, and I know people are going to look at me like I got two heads, but I'm going to say it. You're scared your loved one's going to say yes. Because when your loved one says yes, that requires change. Families already know how to handle a no. Their excuses come from having to let go of their family role, having to sit in the silence of their loved one being gone in treatment, having to identify what it is that they've done to allow it to get this bad, or maybe even contributed to the problem. The consequences of a family not getting their loved one professional and medical attention are devastating. Think about it. I mean, if you had any other medical problem and you said no to it or you put it off, what would happen? And that's what happens when families don't do an intervention. And guys, I want to remind you what an intervention is. Let's remember, an intervention is a clinical instrument that's used hundreds of times a day by each professional throughout their job, meaning they are a strategy used to address a behavior and to meet a specific goal of addressing that behavior. There's all kinds of interventions: government intervention, surgical intervention, early intervention for early childhood education, addiction intervention, mental health intervention. Guys, an intervention is happening whether you come up with the excuses or the objections or not. Either you intervene on your terms or society intervenes on its terms. And I can tell you, after almost 2 decades of doing this, that when society intervenes, you can't do anything about that. Once the law gets their hands on your loved one, once they've passed, once they've put themselves into a position they can't come back from, family too, getting in that same position, you're going to regret choosing the path of inaction, because the consequences of doing nothing are far worse than the consequences of trying to help yourself and your loved one.